You're listening to the FamVestor podcast. If you're looking to raise your family with intention, gain financial independence, and live a life of true freedom, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore together how to create thriving families, because strong families are the cornerstone for a world at peace.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the FamVestor podcast. We're here today to talk about real estate investing. I am your host, Sunny Burns.
And I'm your co-host, Sunmarie Burns.
You want to kick us off with our story, a little blip of what
Sure.
the listeners are going to discover today?
So in this episode, we're going to talk about our real estate journey. This is the story how we, a family of 4 on one income, house hacked our way from $0 to $1 million in real estate in less than 2 years. And how the 2 houses bring in over $100K a year in gross rents and will eventually enable our financial independence.
Complete financial independence from just these 2 properties alone. And we're going to get into that story. So we're going to give you a quick overview of our current real estate investments. We have a 4-family home in Garfield, New Jersey, where we currently live in one of the units. And we bought that in October of 2015. And in August of 2017, 2 years later, we bought our next investment property, a 3-family in North Arlington, New Jersey. These properties are all within the New York City area in northern New Jersey, just 15-minute drive into New York City without traffic, which is pretty much never. But relatively close. So higher prices. You know, that Garfield property we bought for $430,000. That North Arlington 3-family we bought for $350,000. Both properties were way under market value. Today, they're worth together about $1 million, a little over $1 million. And together, the 2 properties, even while we live for free in one of the units, bring in $86.50 a month. So that's $103,000 a year. And we'll go more into the numbers a little later. But that's a quick overview of what our current portfolio looks like. So a little backstory. How did we accomplish all this, and what was like the timeline? So I actually graduated from college in 2013. So that's 6 years ago now. I started working immediately as a mechanical engineer for the Department of Defense. And you started working in 2013 as well as a public art school teacher.
Right.
So both making regular, $50,000 incomes, starting salary. And we just saved a lot of that money. You can refer back to episode 4, where we talk all about how we were able to save for that down payment, how we saved $75,000 in 2 years. So if you want that story, refer back to there. But we essentially lived very frugally to save the down payment for our first real estate investment.
Right. And we weren't making crazy paychecks, pretty average, starting salaries. So they were good salaries, but they weren't anything extravagant. So it's definitely something attainable for anyone who is ambitious enough to try.
Right. So started working in 2013, got married in 2013, that same summer of me graduating. And then in 2015, 2 years later, we had our first son, our eldest son, Valen. And 6 months after he was born, we bought that first investment property.
It took us about a year to get that first initial property up and running, and during that time we had our second son, and we liked the process so much we decided to do it again. So we shopped for our second property when we found a triplex in North Arlington and made that our second purchase.
Right, and that was off Craigslist, so that was a very interesting property.
An
for sale by
off-market
owner.
find.
Right. Mm-hmm. So why did we do all this, in a matter of 2 years, this kind of whirlwind renovations, buying properties? Ultimately, the purpose, and we shared a little bit about this in episode 4, is financial freedom, escaping the rat race. And for us, we really believe in the American dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But, we feel like it's kind of been corrupted a little bit over the years. I feel like when the president first kind of said, a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage, it was basically just meeting the basic human needs and wants of everyone. But since then, I feel like so much of our society has become so materialistic. There's all this overabundance and consumerism. Everyone is stuck on getting the best status symbols, trying to buy their happiness, and constantly brainwashed by ads and becoming enslaved by consumer debt.
We didn't want that. We made a decision early on. We want to buy freedom, not things. So we've been very intentional in our life choices to pursue that instead. So we feel that time is our most valuable asset. So that's one given. We feel we don't want to be stuck living paycheck to paycheck. We've seen a lot of friends and family members going through that, and it does hang you up on a lot of dreams and ambitions. And we wanted the freedom to be able to raise our family the way we want to, not have to make decisions based off of financial needs, but have the freedom and flexibility to be able to do things according to what we wanted to do, not what we needed to do.
Right, and that brings us to our first 4-family house we bought and why it was so incredible. It was so incredible because Sunri was on maternity leave. You know, she was taking a year off of her school to stay home with Valen. That was the current plan. While he was 6 months old, we closed on the property, and you know, she was making a $50,000 salary. And when we had the place fully rented out and we're living in one of the units for free, we were bringing in $50,000. So dollar for dollar, it replaced her income. And it enabled, you know, us a small level of financial independence for you to essentially retire from your teaching job and for us to stay home.
Right. And that was a very liberating aha moment for us. The fact that, you know, through buying this particular house, I was granted enough flexibility financially to be able to make that choice, to be able to stay home. And that was something I wanted to do. So I was really happy that opportunity came about for us through real estate.
So let's dig into this property a little bit. Again, you know, it's in Garfield, New Jersey. It's 15 minutes from New York City, so expensive area. We buy it in 2015, October 2015, we buy it for $430,000. We put 10% down on a conventional mortgage. So that was $43,000 we put down. There was about $10,000 in closing costs, so $53,000 total. Over the next 6 months after purchasing, we put in about $25,000 worth of renovation money. So a total of around $75,000 we have all into this project. And the mortgage was, you know, conventional financing, 10% down over 30 years. It was a 4% loan. There was no PMI. We went through the smaller portfolio lender called Trustco Bank, who didn't charge PMI. So that all was pretty good there. And there's actually 2 duplexes on one lot, so two families on one piece of property. And it was in pretty kind of shabby shape, but we really, you know, started renovating immediately.
Did a lot of the work ourselves because we were just starting out, you know. Money was a little bit tight, so we made it count wherever we applied it. So a lot of the work was very DIY. We learned a lot through the processes, got family members and friends in there to help us demo kitchens, pull up flooring, install new kitchens and new flooring. There I am doing some tile work. We did a lot of it ourselves, and we did hire out some of the work as well where we felt we needed the expertise.
Right, but we wanted to fix up the place and make it really nice, do a really good job with our renovation to attract quality tenants who are going to stay there a long time and be very happy with the place, but also be able to charge a premium rent for the place as well. And, you know, we put in our frugal touches. You know, we bought used kitchens off Craigslist. People were throwing them out. They were 10 years old. They wanted a new renovated kitchen. And we were like, we'll take them. They still have 20, 30 years of life left in them.
They were still better than what we had. So they were definitely an upgrade.
Right. We were even able to use the, what is that? Not granite countertop. They were the man-made stone, Corian countertops. And yeah, so we made the units really nice. And
on a shoestring budget. So, before we get too far into it, I kind of want to go over finances and why someone would buy perhaps a 4-family home as opposed to a single-family home as their first starter home. So, you know, income is kind of like your offensive finances, which is like money you bring in. So your defensive finances are dealing with your expenses or money you spend. So cash flow is income minus expenses. And then there's 2 sets of kind of financial assets and liabilities. So assets are something that pay you and liabilities are something that cost you. A lot of people just generally consider houses as assets. But honestly, a lot of houses are liabilities. They cost you a lot of money. So we were, you know, just looking around at a $430,000 house, we could see, you know, we could buy this 4-family house. It's kind of grungy looking. It's really beat up, needs a lot of work. Or we could buy... in the fanciest neighborhood, for sure.
Right, and it was definitely the worst house on the block by far. or we could, go down the street to a neighboring town and buy, a 5-bed, 2 full bath, great lawn, great 2-car garage for, the same $430,000 price point.
A dream starter home.
A dream starter home. Everyone idealizes as, yeah, I got this nice 5-bedroom house, 2 baths. It's the ideal American dream per se. But, we, like I said before, we want to sacrifice the nicer things to buy our freedom. And the reason we did that is because with a 4-family home, sure, you have all the same expenses and maybe even like 20% more than a single family home. Expenses like mortgage, property tax, insurance, utilities, water, sewer. In total, our property has $3,375 a month in expenses. Our mortgage is $2,000 a month. Our property taxes is around $12,000 a year or $1,000 a month just for the property taxes alone. $1,500 a year in insurance, $2,000 in utilities, $500 a year for water, $500 a year for sewer. So a total of like $3,300 a month in expenses. That's $40,000 a year for the expenses on this 4-family house. But a single family house would cost about the same.
Right.
And if you're shelling out $3,000 a month just for your living expense, your housing cost, that's, half your paycheck if you're on a $100,000 salary. For those who listened to episode 4, where it broke down $50,000 salary to $100 a day, and if you were rent an apartment for $1,500 a month, divided by that by 30 days in a month, that's $50 a day you're spending, or half your $50,000 salary on that housing. So that was $1,500 rent. Now imagine spending $3,000 a month on your $430,000 dream home.
Right.
So much of your paycheck is going straight to that house for the next 30 years or however long you financed it for. So you are essentially almost a slave to that beautiful house.
Right.
Sure, maybe you're going to be happy over the next 30 years, but for us, that was not our goal.
And that's where a lot of families find themselves. They buy that house and then all of a sudden they find, it's really expensive to keep up with it. So they have to make the more difficult choices of maybe both having to work or finding ways to meet that high expense on a monthly
They make
basis.
sacrifices in other areas, and those were areas we didn't want to make sacrifices in. So that's why we went for this 4-family house. Because, yes, we had that huge expense, but then we had, we got to live in one of the units for free, and the other 3 units paid for all the expenses. We have an upstairs unit, and all these are 3-bedroom units. We had an upstairs unit where our in-laws actually moved in. And, they help around the house. They were the first to move in. The place wasn't great at the time. Anyway, we gave them a rate of $1,000 a month. The other 2 units, we got $1,700 a month for one of the other units, $1,850 a month for another unit. And then we charge a parking fee of $35 a month. And then we have on-site coin-operated laundry for all the units, which collects about $50 a month. So in total, we're getting $4,600 a month while we live in one of the units for free. So $4,600 minus the $3,300 expense, that's $1,200 a month that we are cash flowing. And of course, that's only $14,000 a year that we're bringing in from this property. But you got to think, we don't have any of that housing expense. So we're able to grow our finances so much quicker than the average person who has that huge rent cost or that housing cost.
Right.
So that's why this is called house hacking, where you live maybe in a duplex where you live on one side and you have your tenant pay a portion of the mortgage. But if you can house hack with a 3-family or ideally a 4-family, where, now you're splitting a lot of those expenses amongst 4 properties and you're able to bring in 4 times the rent of like a single family, it's such a powerful formula.
Right.
So that's what we did with our first 4-family property. And, you got to think, sure, you're living for free and you're making a little bit of money. And I'm not factoring in maintenance costs. There is maintenance costs in here. So that $14,000 a year we're making is really pretty much just breaking even and allowing us to live for free. But you got to figure...
But living for free is huge.
Right. And then in 30 years, we're going to have a fully paid off house, which is currently appraised at $620,000, that the tenants, we didn't have to pay a penny for that. The tenants have been paying that mortgage for us. So we're gaining all this equity. We have all these tax deductions from the property taxes. 2 years ago, we only paid $500 in federal income taxes for the year, which is crazy. I was making a six-figure salary. Well, not 2 years ago, but close. That's what I'm making now.
And we had a lot of renovation costs.
Right. There were so many expenses going into this house. So we were able to write that off. We were able to write off the mortgage interest, the property taxes, all those deductions. And we did a great job with this property. We made it it was the worst property on the block. And now all our neighbors love us because we transformed it. Really, all the credit goes to Sunmarie for all her genius ideas and transforming it into a beautiful place that some people, like we, actually enjoy and love living here.
When Sonny first brought me to the property, he found it and he said, "I found our dream home. This is it. This is the one for us." And he brought me there and I'm like, oh my gosh, could he have picked a more ugly, hideous place for us to consider home? And initially I was pretty negative about it until Sonny laid out the financial benefits of making this decision, because I was still a little caught up on that dream home, and it took a little while for me to be willing to sacrifice that. But I realized quickly, this is the smartest move for us to make, because by doing this, we'll be able to have so much more flexibility moving forward. So we did that. We jumped into it, made the sacrifice of not getting the really cute yard and lawn. Our property actually doesn't have a single blade of grass on it, until we built planter boxes, which now house a couple bushes. But yeah, on the flip side, low lawn care.
Right. But what I think really sold you, Sunmarie, was the fact that, you had this dream that you want to homeschool our children, because you were homeschooled growing up and you want that same level of love and care your mom gave you or parents gave you raising up. And you were willing to make that sacrifice of not buying that dream property initially, but, sacrificing a little bit and house hacking that 4-family property. And it wasn't easy. 6 months after giving birth, you are repairing sidewalks that have cracks in it with cement and ripping off tile, ripping out rugs. It's not easy. We're doing this. I'm working full time, so I'm coming home every night doing all this work, putting in this effort. But that's eventually led to so much freedom for us, so much
the freedom to be able to make the decisions without the stress of finances. And that's ultimately what it boils down to. Yeah, it wasn't glamorous and it was a lot of hard work. House ownership is a lot of hard work no matter what, whether you buy a single family or a multifamily. Maybe a multifamily is slightly more complex because you're dealing with the added element of tenants and keeping other families happy in the home that you're providing for them. But overall, the sacrifices were well worth it because it, like you mentioned, enabled us the freedom to really be there for our kids where we wanted to be without stressing over money.
Right. And a lot of people get scared off when they hear, I have to deal with tenants now, and there's no way I can deal with tenants. But, we're going to touch on that in a little bit towards the end of this episode, and show our exact criteria we use to select tenants and the really easy process that we've kind of created to go through tenants and really pick great tenants. We love our tenants. We go on hikes with our tenants.
They're great people. And,
right.
And ultimately, it's a relationship of respect. We try to provide them with the best possible housing and meet their needs. And in return, we have great, happy tenants
who are our neighbors.
Wonderful neighbors and friends.
Right. So, anyway, going kind of into buying our next house. How are we able to do that? So there's this method of called BRRRR. I'm not going to go too into detail. If you want to research more, go to my website, FamVestor.com/metalhorseproperties, and I go really in depth into this. But I'm going to breeze through it now. So it's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So basically you buy the house. We bought it really cheap because it was in a grungy condition.
And it was bank owned.
Mm-hmm. And then we forced equity or forced appreciation into it by putting in, $25,000 worth of work. And then we refinanced. So we did a cash out refinance, which is essentially getting a brand new mortgage. But now this time, instead of the house being worth $430,000, it appraised at $550,000, and we were able to take out $120,000. Or it appreciated for $120,000 more than we bought it for, and we pulled out $67,000 in cash. So that was pretty much dollar for dollar what we put into the property. And then a year later, we got another appraisal because we put that $67,000 back into the property to do more renovations. And we did a home equity line of credit this time, and this time it appraised instead of $430,000, instead of $550,000, it appraised for $630,000, so $200,000 over what we bought it for. We established a credit line of $61,000, and that $61,000 is what we ended up using for that next house purchase. Because this time we put down 20% for this next triplex, but yeah, that's how we got the money for it. And it was just a property that we found on Craigslist. We were looking around. We wanted to grow our portfolio a little bit to eventually enable our complete financial freedom. Sunry was financially independent, but I was still working. I am still working, but we knew that this was something we liked doing and something we were good at. And so we found that next property. But, in a competitive market, you got to start looking at other places. So I started setting up automated Craigslist ads to email to me. And eventually this 3-family popped up from North Arlington. And it was for sale for $375,000. I did my analysis on it. I have my analysis spreadsheet on FamVestor.com/resources. So I ran the numbers. I saw that it cash flowed really well. It's actually a really under market deal. If it was on the MLS, on the listings, it would have been worth so much more. We put an offer on it immediately. I think within like 2 or 3 days, I called the owner. I asked him a bunch of questions. I actually, for this property, if you want to see step-by-step on a huge, really long post, I have a post called FamVestor.com/triplex, and I go step-by-step how we purchased this property. Honestly, I have, it's like 116 days to closing, and I have like 30 mini posts within each thing. How we got a pre-approval, how we made the formal offer, how we researched the public records on the property, how we had our contracts written up, scheduled a home inspection, all the steps you would need to purchase any kind of home, even a single family home. So I really encourage people to look at the post. It's FamVestor.com/triplex, and you can really get into it. Sunri, can you bring me back to where we were?
Yeah, so we bought the second property off the MLS. What we were finding when we were looking for our next property was that any multifamily in the area was very competitive if we found it on the MLS or on the typical modes like Trulia and Redfin. So it wasn't working out for us. We were seeing houses going for far more than list price, and it just was pretty insane. So we took more creative routes. We started looking Craigslist. That's where we found this one. Some people choose mailers or other types of ways of finding deals, but we found this one through Craigslist as a for sale by owner, which means that it wasn't getting the same kind of foot traffic as a house normally gets on the MLS. Gave us a much better chance. So we checked out the property, we liked it, we put in our offer with the owner, he liked our offer and accepted it, and we moved forward from there.
Right. So again, we did, this property again was kind of not taken care of in the best way.
It needed a lot of work. I'd say actually it needed a lot more work than our Garfield property did, but we had more experience at this point, so we felt confident in tackling this slightly bigger project.
Right. So we again bought a bunch of used kitchens, used vanities, and just started renovating bathrooms, flooring, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So anyway, we don't want to bore you with the details here, but what I really am excited to share with you guys today is the idea of gaining financial independence just from 2 houses. And so I'm going to go over the numbers with you here. So again, we bought that Garfield property October 2015, North Arlington probably August of 2017. Together, they're now worth about $1.15 million, and that's just through forced appreciation in the most recent appraisals. So that $350,000 triplex we bought has just like a couple months ago appraised for $525,000. So anyway, the Garfield property, while we live in it, brings in $54,000 a year. In North Arlington, it's a 3-family. So the first unit brings in $1,400 a month. Second unit brings in $1,500 a month. Third unit, it's just a 1-bedroom, brings in $1,200 a month. The other units are 2 bedrooms. So in total, it's $4,100 a month or $50,000 a year. So together, it's about $100,000 a year in rental income. The Garfield and North Arlington properties have about $80,000 a year in expenses. So really, we're just netting between the 2 properties about $20,000 a year. So that's not a great amount of money, it's not anything to retire off of, but we get to live for free, which is huge. So live for free and bring in $20,000 a year. But we have other plans to kind of maximize our returns, maximize the amount of rental income we can get. So in Garfield, there's this one exterior unit that we're actually right now in the process of transforming into an Airbnb. And our plan, after talking to the one other Garfield Airbnber, he was saying he gets ridiculously high occupancy rates, like 85% occupancy. I took him out to Dunkin' Donuts and we just chatted. And he charges only $55 a night, but it's kind of his just basement apartment with a pull-out sofa he rents out. And it's the most surprising thing. Like Garfield, maybe you'd think like New York City people are staying, but what he said is there's actually a lot of wedding venues in Garfield. So people from out of town just come, stay the night just to attend the wedding and then go home. And that's how he gets his occupancy. So you never know why people will rent in your area, like Airbnbs and things like that. But anyway, we're expecting about $17,000 a year on the low end from this Airbnb. So to add that to the $20,000 in net profit from these two properties, because anything we can make above and beyond now at this point with all the expenses established is gravy on top. So with that $17,000 from the Airbnb, and then we're thinking to finish up the basement to rent that out as an office in North Arlington, or perhaps just storage space. So if it's just storage space, it would probably only be about $500 a month. So that's an additional, if we rent it as a basement office, we're thinking about $9,000 a year. So from the Airbnb, from the original net profit of $20,000 a year and the basement, that we're talking about $46,000 a year we'd be bringing from these two properties now after those renovations are complete. But, what happens once, so again, we're still living for free at this point, but what happens once we move out? We know we can rent our unit for about $1,900 a month. We can rent our in-laws unit and probably an additional $700 a month. And, so if we move out, it's $2,600 a month extra we'd be making, or $31,000 a year extra. So now we're talking a net profit of $77,000 a year just from these two properties alone. Again, now we have to pay for housing somewhere, but we're bringing $77,000 a year net profit. And, now I'm factoring in maintenance costs of around $11,000 a year for these properties already as an expense. That's where that $80,000 expense came from. So we're doing pretty good. $77,000 a year. Us being as frugal as we are could definitely live off that very easily. But what happens if we pay down the mortgage? This is where things get really exciting. What do you think, Sammy? Am I doing a good job?
Sure.
A lot of numbers, I know. It would help if you watched the YouTube video, but I'm trying to explain it as best I can. So we're at $77,000 a year with this Airbnb, with the basement office, and moving out. So $77,000 a year in profit. But what happens once we get rid of the mortgage? The mortgage actually accounts for $24,000 a year in the Garfield property and $15,000 a year in the North Arlington property. Once we can get rid of that mortgage, that's $40,000 total we'd be adding to our bottom line. $3,300 a month, $40,000 total between the two properties. So add that to the $77,000 a year, and that's $117,000 a year we'd be bringing in after the mortgages are paid off. And again, we have 30-year mortgages on these properties, but we can pay them down quicker. We have a very high savings rate with the very frugal lifestyle we live. So I've calculated that we could pay down the North Arlington property, which has a small mortgage, in about 3 years. And then 4 years later, using the kind of the snowball method of what we were paying for the mortgage to pay down the Garfield property, we could do it in about 4 more years. So in 7 years, if we didn't max out our retirement accounts and just focused on paying down these two properties, we could do it in 7 years. And at $117,000 a year, or $9,750 a month, we could definitely retire. So I just think it's so powerful. A lot of people think you have to make a real estate empire, but really what I'm kind of sharing is just from these two small multifamilies properties we own, we can retire and, we'd have it made, $117,000. We don't spend nearly that much. We should probably spend around half that. So we would have it made. We'd be golden with just these two properties once we pay them off.
Right.
Pretty cool, right?
Very cool. And I think it's really a great perspective. You know, if you're aggressive with your paying off of your mortgages, you can get them down quicker. The quicker, the better. You really do feel the benefits of all those rents, whereas when you have the mortgage, it's a lot less significant. But yeah, very, very exciting.
Yeah. So I hope all you listeners at home or in the car were able to follow that. I know it was a lot of numbers, but essentially from just a 4-family and a 3-family home, once they're paid off, once we're moved out and everything's fully occupied and rented, we're expecting around $117,000 a year. So enough to retire off of. Most people would be able to retire off of. And that's net profit. That's after all expenses are taken care of. Expenses we're expecting is around $80,000 a year between these two properties. So with that, we kind of want to give you some actionable tips. If you're thinking about, real estate investing or, starting out your family with a 2-family house purchase rather than a single family, which is what we strongly encourage, is we want to give you actionable tips on finding renters and the process of how that looks like. Because I know that's the scariest part for most people.
It's very intimidating. I feel like that is the factor that holds back a lot of people from even considering entering multifamily properties, as they are just afraid. So we've found some processes that work for us, and it's been working out well for us, so we wanted to share that with you.
Right. So what I really want to recommend is a service called cozy.co, and it's completely free for the landlord, and pretty much all the services are free. www.cozy.co. And it does free online rent collection. So all our tenants pay us online. We don't have to go knocking on their door at the first of the month and asking for rent.
Very convenient.
They just pay it online. It does online rent application collection, so we don't collect paper applications. They just apply their online. And you can, what we do is we have an optional background check and an optional credit score check. This is the only thing that the tenants will have to pay for. They're about $25 each or $40 together. And what we make them optional for the online application, because we say, hey, let us know about what you're at with your credit score, and we'll verify it in the end if we accept you. But we don't want everyone paying $40 for no reason. So we'll say, just tell us what you're about. And then when we make our final selection and we say, hey, you're the best financial candidate for our property, please run your credit, run your background check, and then we'll accept you as tenants. And the only other payment you would have to pay for cozy.co would be if your tenants pay by credit card or debit card. They charge like about a 3% transaction fee. But other than that, if you use bank-to-bank ACH transfers, it's free for the tenant to pay the rent online. And this is what we do for all our units. So we have 6 units, since we live in one for free, because we have 7 total units. So 6 of them are paying us via cozy.co. And it's really convenient to have it all in one place. Really cool. And so another thing we do when we do have an available unit is we hold an open house. So we rent out these units ourselves. We're on site showing the property during... we tried to hold like 2 weekends of open houses with 2 weekdays thrown in there too.
Right. We try to make sure that we allow as many people as possible who want to come see the units the opportunity. So we usually pick weekend times, mornings, afternoons, and then weeknights for those who work during the week and want to come in the evenings. And we do open houses because since we manage our own rentals, it would be a lot of work to have to respond to every single inquiry with a showing of the place. So we found that this works really nicely, where we say, thank you for your interest. These are the dates we're going to be showing the unit. Please come at your convenience on any of these dates, and we will talk to you then.
Right, because we don't want people saying, oh yeah, I'll see you at 5 o'clock that day, and then we're waiting around at the property for them to show up. So we found that, we'll put them on our schedule, and we'll give them multiple times where they can show up. And what we really like about this process is it brings in a whole bunch of people. And we're very upfront in our ads. This is the criteria you need to...
we'll lay out the
financial
income
criteria.
Requirements.
Right, so we say you need at least a minimum credit score of 630. You need to make 2.5 times the rent as a combined gross income. So that's just to make sure that they can afford this place. What other requirements do we have? We say like pets on a case-by-case basis. Right. And we just lay out, the terms of the property. You need to pay your own utilities. Parking is either street parking or we provide parking. And we lay that all out very clearly, so we know when they come.
They know what they're what they're
in
getting
for.
in for.
Right. So once they show up at the property and they're interested, we say, okay, here's a link to the Cozy application. Go online, fill out all your information, and then we see their whole profile when they submit it. We see how much income they're making. They'll give us references, their employers, so we can verify all their references. And we actually do this because I think the biggest headache comes from selecting bad tenants, and that's where you hear all these nightmare landlord stories. And we've been lucky enough now, having like maybe 8 tenants throughout our history, to never have a bad tenant. All of them have been awesome.
Really wonderful
and I think
people.
that's just because we do a very diligent, thorough screening process.
Right.
Right, and by having these open houses, we tell them, whoever has the strongest financials will get picked for the unit within the allotted time frame.
Right. So we show the house for 2 weekends and then a couple weeknights, and we tell anyone who is interested and is applying that we'll make our decision after the last open house, and then we pick the strongest candidate based off of their credentials.
Yeah, credit score, their employment history, their combined gross income for the family. And yeah, Cozy makes that a really seamless process, because after their application is done and we accept them as tenants, they automatically go into the Cozy system and are able to start paying rent immediately. They can even give the security deposit online. Just a great seamless process. We also charge a $10 a day late fee. So if they're late, we can just add a $10 charge every day that they're late. We've only had one tenant we've had to do that for, but that's just incentive for them to pay us and make us a priority rather than maybe their telephone bill they're late on. So that's pretty much our entire real estate spiel we got here.
Yeah.
Hope you guys were able to enjoy that. I do want to say, if you are interested in this, I highly recommend checking out my Triplex post, FamVestor.com/Triplex. I wish I had this when I was first starting, because it
really is a step-by-step guide. Any question you could possibly have as a newbie home buyer, he answers in that article.
It's basically a diary of our entire purchasing journey, as well as after purchasing, our entire renovations, how we went about buying the materials, how we ended up restoring the property, and it's humongous. It will probably take you a full hour or 2 hours to read through it, but there's tons of pictures. There's not many words. It's filled with pictures, and it's great. I did a really good job. You should check it out. And I have other posts, if you want just kind of a flavor of kind of what we talked about with maximizing your investments and retiring, go to FamVestor.com/1millionrealestate. That one will give you a good picture of kind of what we talked about, how you can retire off just these 2 properties alone. And for those who are already landlords out there, if you go to FamVestor.com/resources, I have all my real estate investing forms, my lease, my holding deposit form. I have like 20 forms on there that you can just, they're Google Docs, you can just click and start using. And I have my property analysis tool, my expense tracking tools for all my real estate related expenses. So it makes it really easy at the end of the year to calculate all that together. I have my property appraisal spreadsheet, all these tools, how to use Cozy, all of that's on there. So definitely check that out if you're into this, or just kind of want to see a framework of how you could start real estate investing. And with that, definitely check out if you want to know how can I save that deposit for that real estate investment purchase, check out episode 4, where we talk about, how to manage your money with mastery and how to save for that down payment. We tell you how we saved for it in 2 years, how we saved $75,000, and how you can too, our tips and strategies for doing that. And with that, Summer, you want to close us out of here?
Yeah, so thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you found some of this information helpful and that we didn't throw too many numbers at you, but definitely something that we are very passionate about, and we hope that we could get you inspired about considering multifamily real estate yourself.
Right. Everyone needs to live somewhere, and if you can make that first choice, to live in a 2-family house, And sure, it's a sacrifice, but what we found, it is so worth it. And we try to tell all our friends, buy a 2-family, or buy a 4 even. That's even better. But at least buy a 2. It will make all the difference. And, you're not going to live in that first starter home probably for more than 5 years. You're probably going to live there for 3 years, and then something will happen. Your job will change. Your life circumstance will change. You'll get a baby. You'll need another place anyway. And then you can rent it out, and it'll actually cash flow rather than a single family, which will probably just barely be able to break even, if that, probably not. So it's such a better strategy to just propel you forward in your finances and give you, infinite more potential than the next person who bought that super expensive maxed out single family house.
Right. So with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you'll join us on our next episode, which will be about backpacking through Europe with a 6-month-old baby.
Right. So good luck, guys, and Godspeed.
Take care.
Bye.